Hello everyone. Welcome to Certification Prep course for SC-200 Microsoft Security Operations Analyst certification. So let's start by talking about SC-200 exam. As we mentioned before, this exam is a role-based exam intended for Microsoft Security Operations Analyst's role. So, what does that mean? This exam actually focuses on learning about threats in cybersecurity and how to investigate those threats, how to respond, and how to hunt for threats. So, you will learn about Microsoft tools that is going to help you to investigate security related threats as well as take actions on these threats. And the tools that we are going to focus on in this course and for SC200 exam are Microsoft 365 Defender, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and Microsoft Sentinel. Now, keep in mind that Microsoft 365 Defender has a lot of internal tools as well. So, we will talk more about those tools as we go to those chapters. We mentioned role-based exam. In case you are not familiar with Microsoft certifications and different types of exam, let's take a quick look. There are three main types of exams for Microsoft certification. Fundamental exams deal with just the fundamental concept of that particular area. And when you pass that exam, you get the certification for passing fundamental certification. For example, AZ 900, MS 900 are some of the popular fundamental exams. Then you have specialty exams, and these are specialized, as the name mentioned, for certain roles or certain types of technology. For example, you have specialty exams for support engineer exam for Azure Network. So it is kind of very focused on Azure Network type of activities that a support engineer usually engage on. So then you have role-based exams, and this is a role-based exam. Role-based exams usually have two levels. Level one is associate level exam, and this is a associate level exam. Anyone who passes this exam will have Microsoft Security Operations Analyst Associate certification. And then you have expert level exam that is the next level. And we will take a look at that. So as you can see from the certification path for this particular exam, or rather security related certification, is that you can start with the fundamental exam, which is SC 900. Then you can move on with the associate level exam, which is SC 200. Now, keep in mind that if you're familiar with the basic concept of security and Microsoft products, then you don't have to take SC 900 exam. It is not a prerequisite. You can just take the SC 200 level exam and get your associate level certification. And then you can take the SC 100 exam and become an expert. Keep in mind that SC 100 exam has a prerequisite. And let's now take a look at the prerequisite for SC 100 exam. So you can take SC 200 this exam and become Microsoft Certified Security Operations Analyst Associate. And after you pass this exam, you can take the SC 100 exam, and combination of SC 200 and SC 100 will give you Microsoft Certified Cyber Security Architect Expert certification. Now, keep in mind that you don't have to necessarily take SC 200 as a prerequisite to SC 100 exam. You can also take AZ 500 or SC 300 exam. So, what are the prerequisites for this course? Before taking this course, you should have some idea or experience in Microsoft 365 applications and its features. So, we will fundamentally focus on securing Microsoft 365 apps. So, you should have some ideas of what are those apps and how are those app features can pose certain security threats. You should also be familiar with Microsoft Windows operating system basics, Azure basics, some of the security and compliance related features within Microsoft Azure, some of the Azure services, Azure SQL and storage. Just in general, knowing about these services and what is available will definitely help you. Also, you need to understand fundamental concepts around virtual machine and virtual network, because when we talk about different topics, we will directly dive into securing this basic infrastructure. We will not talk about the how to, let's just say, how to set up a virtual network. And also, we will talk a little bit about how to utilize scripting to apply certain security settings. So, scripting related concepts are also a requirement. So, we keep talking about Security Operations Analyst certification. So, what does Security Operation Analyst do? Let's take a look at a typical role or typical responsibilities for this particular role. Security operation analyst is part of the security team in any environment. Um, this team will is responsible for securing the entire IT environment. So it is not just securing the operating system or securing just Azure or securing just certain applications. It is about securing the entire IT environment. And within that security boundary or within that security team, the operations analyst's job is to monitor and respond to incidents. Also, the job involves investigating and hunting for threats. What that really means is that you have tools that kind of gives you certain types of alerts when there is an incident or there is a potential for incident. And by incident, we mean that a concern related to security. And the job of the analyst is to investigate and respond to each of these incidents. And the security operations analyst will do so by utilizing security tools that are available. So basically, you will learn about the security tools, and keep in mind that the security tools are part of implementing a solution. So, what that really means, to give an example, is that when you are implementing a Azure identity solution, it automatically involves implementing a solution that will secure the identity solution, right? And the security operations team is always involved in those solutions. So the security operation analyst's role also involves implementing solutions to a certain degree, at least implementing the security configurations of the solution. So our target audience for this course will be security analysts, security administrators, Azure or Windows administrators, because in many environments, the person who is Azure or Windows administrator is either very deeply involved in security operations, or they are the ones who are also doing security operations. It can be IT consultants and architects who design the entire environment. Um, this course is, as we said, this course involves security, which is a integral part of any IT environment. If you are someone who want to learn how to diagnose security issues in Azure, this course will be very helpful to you regardless of your role in the IT world. For example, you can be a project manager, you can be an IT manager. Regardless, all you're doing is basically learning how to diagnose security issues as well as we'll dive deep into how to pull reports and whatnot. So I think this is a very important and very timely course for anyone involved in the IT world. And not to mention, having this certification will help you tremendously in your career advancement. So we already talked about a lot of benefits of this course, but I'll just go over why you should take this course. Just summarize everything we talked about. First of all, it gives you a role-based certification for security within the Microsoft certification. So this certification will be extremely helpful in your career. It focuses on utilizing security tools, and these tools will come in play in your IT environment all the time. So you'll learn how to use these tools, and which is going to be, again, very helpful. Last but not the least, you will learn about not just to use this tool, but also about the best practices and standards in terms of how to secure your environment. And by doing so, you will also learn about how to combine different areas of Azure as well as different areas of Microsoft application to get your security analysis. Welcome, everyone. In this chapter, we will talk about mitigating threat using Microsoft 365 Defender. In our first lesson, we will introduce you to Microsoft 365 Defender. So, in this lesson, we will talk about Microsoft 365 Defender features. We will also talk about Security Operations Center, commonly known as SOC. And finally, we will talk about how you can utilize Microsoft 365 Defender to work with SOC. Before we dive into the main content, let's take a look at question distribution. So, mitigating threat using specifically Microsoft 365 Defender has 25 to 30% of the questions for SC-200. And this consists of following subtopics. First one is mitigating threat with Microsoft 365 environment, and we will talk more about that in this lesson. Then we will talk about mitigating threat using Microsoft Defender endpoint. We will also talk about mitigating identity threat, and that uses Microsoft 365 Defender for identity. We will talk about manage extended detection and response, or XDR, and also investigate threat using audit features. So these are the core topics, and throughout our lessons for chapter 2 we will discuss these topics. Before we dive into Microsoft 365 Defender, let's take a quick look at what is Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 is a cloud powered productivity platform. With this subscription of Microsoft 365, you get the latest productivity apps, which is very well known. These are Microsoft Office apps such as Microsoft Word, Microsoft Teams, Outlook, SharePoint, and so forth. You also get storage such as OneDrive storage, where all the files related to these apps or any other connected apps are stored. You also get endpoint license and endpoint management system with 365. And finally, you get enterprise voice. That is utilizing Microsoft Teams to make video calls as well as conferences. So, how do you utilize Microsoft 365 Defender? Microsoft 365 Defender is a integrated threat protection suite which solutions that detect malicious activities across Microsoft 365 applications. So, what that really means is that in our previous slide deck, we learned that Microsoft 365 consists of all primarily of all the productivity apps, but it also consists of endpoints and storage. And the Defender protects everything within Microsoft 365 suite, and it actually does more, which we will learn as we go forward. So this suite includes Defender for O365. Those are Office 365, basically consist of the productivity app. Then you have Defender for endpoints, Defender for Internet of Things, your other devices that connect to your endpoints or connect to your Microsoft 365 directly. You have Defender for Cloud Apps. These are apps that are integrated with Azure AD. And finally, you have Defender for Identity. Basically, this is focused on protecting identity. So, how does Microsoft 365 Defender work? Well, it collects extended detection and response, also known as XDR signals. And these signals are collected from endpoints, identity applications such as email or Teams. And basically, all this data is collected to determine if there is a potential threat and what actions to take to mitigate that threat. So basically, what happens is that when all this data is collected, these data is internally is used with threat intelligence algorithm, and then they're kind of categorized into just purely information, and then data that indicate there might be some sort of risk, but nothing has happened yet. And there are certain things that are indicating that there may be malicious activities going on. Those are high priority alerts, and you have to take some action to deal with those alerts. And there might be some warning that is in between high priority alert and risk. So let's take a look at a scenario. This is a compromised device type of scenario. In this case, we can assume that the user or victim receives an email. They open the email. Maybe the email was not in your corporate account, so it could be a personal email, but they use the device that they use for corporate activity to open that email. So even though it was basically not related to the corporate security. However, opening a personal email basically caused this situation where maybe the victim downloaded a malware with attachment. So once the attachment is open, the malware infects the computer. Then in this case, maybe the user is not even aware that there is an attack taking place. However, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, also known as MDE, detects this attack and raises an alert with the security operations, and it provides some detail to the security team. And what the security team can do, then it can use this alert to identify which user and which device is actually infected. And basically, then even remotely, they can basically disable users access to the device or completely disable the device so that the malware cannot just do lateral movement and infect other devices. The alert is also basically raised in Intune, and it will basically note the device as non-compliant. And also there might be alerts in Azure AD, and you can utilize conditional access to block the user. So basically, this example just demonstrates how Microsoft Defender for Endpoint can mitigate a threat. Let's now move on to Security Operations Center, or SOC, also known as SOC. This is very critical concept to understand in order to understand not just Microsoft Defender, but just to understand security in general and how in modern day security is managed. SOC or SOC is the centralized function or team responsible for improving your organization's cybersecurity posture. The SOC team basically monitors identity, endpoint, server, database, everything, including network and website, to uncover any type of potential cybersecurity threat in real time. Um, in addition to threat, it also monitors just in general access to detect if there are any compliance violation or any type of breach that can eventually lead to maybe malware or just security getting compromised. So it basically is responsible for identifying any type of vulnerability within the threat. Keep in mind that most security operations center works round the clock. Basically, the work around SOC basically never sleeps, right? So this is a high level concept of what needs to happen to keep your environment secure. So now we'll see how Microsoft Defender ties into it. So just to recap, some of the key tasks of SOC or SOC is to continuously monitor your environment. And then whenever there are alerts, it creates an incident. And it also needs to have either an automated process or even if it's a manual process, some sort of process to respond to the incident. Another key task is to basically detect threat, which may or may not be related to the incident, right? So you may not always get a like a low level alerts for threat. Sometimes it could be just that right off the bat, your environment is infected with a malware, and that needs to be handled immediately. Last but not the least, another key task is to make sure that regulatory requirements are met, which means that basically data is protected and data is not shared when it's not supposed to, such as social security number or healthcare related data. So the key roles for SOC is someone basically managing the entire tasks or task force who's can be a SOC manager or director. You need to have security engineers doing operational tasks, security analysts who are basically constantly monitoring and analyzing data. And finally, we have forensic analysts, basically, who are doing mostly um, post-mortem type of data. What that really means, that let's just say that a data breach or some sort of malware attack already happened, you have basically restored the system and whatnot. Now you're trying to figure out why this has happened. So the security operations are composed of several distinct functions. And basically, this diagram shows the functions at different level. Now, this different level is basically, it doesn't always have to be these four levels. It can be more or a couple of levels can be combined, but this is just an in general idea. The first part is automation. This is a near real time resolution of known incident types. So you can basically use Microsoft Defender to deal with the known malware. So what it does is that it sees something through its XDR data, and then basically it already knows how to do it. So how to basically mitigate that threat. So it could be maybe somebody sent you an email, somehow it came through, even if you had some protection built in with Microsoft email system. The Microsoft Defender knows that this particular email from unknown or known source, known sender already has an attachment that has basically malware. So basically, it just puts the email in quarantine. So it's dealt automatically. You don't have to do anything. Then you have tier one, where basically the tier where you are doing triages. In this case, they focus on rapid remediation of high volume or well known incident that requires very quick resolution. So, this is often basically tasked with approved automation type of task, which are basically remediation of um, known type of attacks. So again, if we look at the previous example, that someone sent you an attachment, and that attachment consists a link to an unknown website. You don't know if if you don't know for sure if that will lead to any malware or something. So basically, in that case, you have a workflow which your security analyst will follow to deal with this situation. So, should we, maybe the email is quarantined? Should you basically let the email out of the quarantine, or you delete it, or do you do further analysis? Um, then you have advanced analysis and remediation, and this is more so for highly complex type of incidents. In this case, basically, the tier 2 team actually serves as the escalation point for tier 1 teams. So they perhaps didn't know in our previous example that using their tools, they're still not able to determine. However, there are some warnings with the attachment. So they escalated for further investigation. Last is the tier 3, which is basically means that proactive hunting, advanced forensic, and detection. And this team can be a multidisciplinary team that is focused on identifying attackers that may have basically slipped through your detection system. Um, and they will proactively hunt for undetected threats, and it can be based on the some of the alerts and threats that has happened. So basically, if you have seen basically if you have your tier 1 and tier 2 have noticed like a high level of emails with attachment coming from all these different sources, they may escalate it to tier 3 to basically actually proactively go and look for why these are being sent, and how they can do some advanced monitoring, or maybe add some more rules and um, processes with email filtering to get rid of this type of attachment. So tier 3 is more so proactive. Even after closing the incidents, maybe there is some proactive stuff that can be done to prevent such incidents. So for Microsoft 365 Defender, for tier 1 type of task, you already have automation, and you can use um, some policies to mitigate most of the scenarios. For tier 2, you can use some advanced tools and analytics. And for tier 3, you can have the threat hunting features. We will talk more about that to basically proactively hunt for threats within the environment or external environment that is interacting with your environment. So basically, this is a very high level view of how modern security operations work with Microsoft 365 Defender. So as you can see that you have um, Microsoft 365 Defender using the extended detection and response XDR to collect data. You also have the SIEM tool, which will be Microsoft Sentinel, that actually also integrates with this data. And then you have your analyst here in the middle, analyst and hunters that are using all these tools as well as all these information that they are gathering to do incident response or to manage detection and response. So basically, this is combining the tools with the processes that go in place to secure your environment. To summarize, we talked about Microsoft 365 Defender and its features, and we also talked about how it works with SOC model. Let's talk about managing incidents in Microsoft 365 Defender. Our learning goal for this lesson will be to define what is an incident. We will talk about how to investigate an incident, and finally, we will talk about the steps to mitigate an incident. So, what is an incident in Microsoft 365 Defender? When you open Microsoft 365 Defender portal, you will notice an option in your menu that says Incidents and Alerts. So, incidents and alerts are combined together. What that really means is that um, incidents are actually a type of an alert. When you have a collection of alerts that indicates a same problem or a same malware, then those collection of alert become an incident in Microsoft 365 Defender portal. Also note that this will impact your security score, as well as this will create the incident and the subsequent remedies in your action center. So basically, you have to take action to resolve the incident. I mean, of course, like you can just keep the incident as it is, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having a security software. So the core underlying theme here is that Microsoft Defender is collecting all these different signals and it is analyzing all this data. And by its threat intelligence, it is able to correlate some of the alerts and it indicates a bigger problem. And at that point, you have an incident. So let's look at this diagram. You have an attacker basically trying to infiltrate several things. Maybe it is trying to basically hack the user's account by targeting identity. Maybe the from the same source you are seeing that the certain device is getting hacked, and also maybe the user is trying to use the same user's username and password to get access into the mailbox. All these alert data goes into Microsoft Defender, and then Microsoft 365 Defender uses the threat intelligence to see that, hey, it's the same attacker that is actually attacking all these different entities. In that case, it correlates all this data and creates a incident. So, what are some of the features of the incident? What to look for, and how you should work with the incident? The incident is basically listed in the incident queue. So, at any given time, usually for mid to large size organization, you can have multiple incident, and the incident queue shows a collection of incidents from different users and devices. You can sort through these incidents by creating priorities, and also you can create basically other filters to see the incident. For example, you can actually see which incidents were raised most recent, or vice versa. You can see the when was the beginning of incidents, because keep in mind there could be incidents that are also related. So multiple incidents can also be related. So it is very possible that one fine day you went uh, you left work and there were no incidents, and then next day there are maybe 20, 30 incidents. So you can customize different columns and stuff to prioritize your incidents, because maybe there are so many that you cannot handle it all at once. So make sure that you use filters to limit which one you're going to handle immediately. And the limit doesn't necessarily mean that you're limiting that you're not going to deal with certain incidents, but it is very possible that there are some incidents that are very critical and some are not so critical. So make sure you use filters to categorize your incidents and you assign them accordingly. You can also use the preview feature to dig deeper into each incident. You can just use the less than sign, kind of, there is a link that has this sign. And then if you click on that, you will preview each line item and related record. And then when you go in there, you'll see the full page view. So, I mean, if you just look into this particular example, so when you see the incident, basically, when you click on that, you'll have all the alert data like, okay, what happened with identity, what happened with device, what happened to mailboxes. All these will be individually logged. So, what is a life cycle of incident? Life cycle of incident can roughly be divided into basically three parts, which is once the incident is raised in the 365 Defender, step one will be to triage the incident. In this stage, a security analyst basically looks into the malware alert that is in the queue, and then basically investigates the alert and then takes basically the step-by-step action that the automation as well as Microsoft recommendation recommends to basically deal with the incident and eventually resolve the incident and close it. Step two basically is further investigation. In this investigation stage, basically the engineers or analysts will verify the remediation steps that has been taken, and basically they can either proceed with further remediation, or they'll just verify that everything is done properly and everything looks good and close the incident. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Anyone of you who are listening, if you have ever worked with basically a ticket or any type of support incident or security incident, you know that at the end of the day, what we always want to do with incidents is make sure that it is closed. Otherwise, it means that it has to be dealt with. So basically, in this step, remediation steps are verified and incident is closed. Last one is basically hunt, and hunt can also be like a post-mortem type of action. In this stage, basically, um, the security analyst or engineers will be reviewing the closed incident to see if there are multiple incidents with the same type of attack and same type of commonalities. And that is where basically they can find some anomaly that is lurking around your environment. And basically they will take some steps to, to basically detect that anomaly and take appropriate action to mitigate that threat. And this is why it is known as the step where you are hunting for threats. But regardless of that, it is usually a post mortem type of activity to do some proactive stuff to secure your environment. So let's just go over it, just to look at how what you're supposed to see. So in triage state, this is basically a reaction to alert. Uh, in triage state, for most part, you'll have a near real-time resolution for known incident types. Triage basically focuses on rapid remediation of a well-known scenario, and basically you want to make sure that it is like dealt with and closed in 90% of the time, and it actually deals with very focused area. So in other words, the team, if you have 30, 40 incidents waiting for you in this stage, basically there are some, most of this incident should be that there's already a resolution there, and just somebody just needs to quickly approve it or let the automated action take into effect. This is what you want to knock down in triage state. um, then you have investigation stage where you are verifying all your findings, and the remediation process is either already set in motion or you are basically re-evaluating the remediation steps to make sure that everything is done properly. You can proceed with further investigation or you can close case. In the hunt stage, basically incident is reviewed by security team, and oftentimes in this stage, the incidents that are reviewed are already resolved, so these are cold cases. And the system is scanned to find if there are any linked issues. So like I said, that it doesn't have to be that your system is always experiencing some sort of high volume of incident. Even if your system is good but there was maybe incidents, or maybe there were not any incidents, but still your security to should look into cold cases or closed cases, just to see if there are any type of anomaly in the system. So, threat intelligence goes hand in hand with actually every single stage. It is basically utilized to understand why these alerts are happening and what steps to take. So, very simply put, threat intelligence can identify any type of malware or anomaly very quickly. And not only it identifies the anomaly, it can also give you step by step direction as to what to do next. Um, Threat intelligence is based on research on active incidents, and also it proactively does research on attacks that is happening outside your organization. So as you already know that Microsoft uh, cloud is basically an all encompassing system. It's not just your environment. So it is capable of looking into generalized data, not organization specific data, to understand what is going on. So even if your system is completely secure and you haven't experienced, let's just say, any latest ransomware type of event, but threat intelligence that is working in the back end already is aware of that there is some sort of ransomware going around in other environments. So it will scan your environment just to make sure that your environment is protected. And finally, it gives you a lot of strategic analysis and insight of your environment that can help you protect your environment even further. To summarize, we talked about what is an incident, and we also talked about life cycle of an incident. Hi everyone. In this lesson, we are going to talk about investigating incidents. So our goal is to define incident and its properties. We will also talk about how to manage incidents. And finally, we will talk about automating incidents. So let's take an overview of incidents as it presents itself in Microsoft Defender. Um, as you can see from the screenshot here, is that you will have incidents that are reported, and then you'll have alerts. So the attack categories in this screenshot gives you a visual and numeric view of how advanced the attack has progressed. So keep in mind that Microsoft 365 Defender is aligned with the um, meter attack framework. So based on this framework, it gives you a overall view of different alerts. And that is a key information that you need to know in terms of investigating incidents. Um, it gives you the information of total number of alerts and in which meter attack categories are involved. It also gives you information such as which devices are impacted and how many users are impacted and how many mailboxes are impacted. The scope section gives you a list of the impacted assets that we already talked about as part of the incident. If there is a specific information regarding these assets, such as risk level, investigation priority, or any other tagging on the assets, it will also show up in the scope section. You also see the alert timeline. So just keep in mind, alerts, all these alerts are part of one incident. And the last thing to note is the section that you see at the bottom, which is the evidence section. It provides you with a summary of how many different artifacts were included in the incident and their remediation status. So you can actually immediately identify if any action is needed and when it can be taken. So this is the overview that you can utilize to initially triage and investigate your incident and also potentially do the remediation task. So let's look at how you can actually manage the alerts from your incident and alert section. Managing alert basically means how you're going to respond. You can choose to ignore an alert. Either way, it needs to be managed. And the way to manage alerts is to basically manage the metadata properties that are associated with that incident, and this will help you basically manage the incident properly. So, for example, there are some key fields called severity category linked to other incidents, and you need to make sure that you understand each of these categories and they are actually assigned properly. So, let's look at one of the more critical categories, which is the alert severity. So, alert severity can be high, medium, or low, depending on the type of alert. The severity of the alert um, basically defines how critical the alert is and how soon it needs to be dealt with. Um, for example, an alert about, let's just say, a commercial malware that was detected while executing but blocked and remediated by Microsoft Defender AV is categorized as low because may um, it could not cause any harm to your system, but it still poses some sort of threat to your system because it was somehow discovered in your device or one of the user's device. So even though it is a low level malware that was not able to cause anything, but it still exists, so something needs to be done. So in this case, perhaps like, get a device refresh, right? Like take the device in, just reinstall the operating system and then get all the users data from backup. That should take care of it. An alert about a malware detected, which is actually is posing a threat, can also be ranked as medium or high, even if it has not caused any damage yet. So the key thing to remember is that Microsoft 365 Defender is looking into different threats and determining the severity based on what type of harm the threat can cause. So, when you are investigating these alerts, there are several things that can be done. Make sure that you are investigating the alert using quote unquote the story. What that really means is that in the dashboard, you actually see correlated alerts and what is taking place in the mailbox, the user's identity, and so forth. All of these play into a story, as in a malware perhaps was downloaded by user from the mailbox and then it is now moving to user's file, maybe other user system, so forth. So keep those all this correlation in mind while you are investigating, and make sure you take the actions that is recommended in the details pane, or unless you think of a more appropriate action. You can also link to other incidents. Basically, incidents, if Microsoft Defender um, finds the alert is related to an incident, it'll relate to it. But you can link it as well. Make sure you assign the alert to take action. There are ways to suppress alerts as well if alerts are more informational and there is nothing to do. You can obviously change status when you have dealt with the alert. Make sure you close the alert. And last but not the least, make sure you add comments. Let's look at the alert categories. The categories oftentimes define the types of attack and gives you a visual and numeric value of how advanced the attack has progressed. So here are some of the different categories. It basically, it gives you the option to understand that what type of attack is happening. So, for example, do you have an attack that is a privilege access attack, like it has already gained privilege access? So that would be a high priority issue needs to be dealt with. But if it's a low priority malware, a malware that is already, already has been dealt with, your antivirus system can deal with the malware, then you may not need to take action immediately. But the key thing to remember is to look at different attack ca- categories to make sure what type of alert you are dealing with. Let's talk about automated investigation. When we are talking about automated investigation, what we really mean is that an alert or a group of alerts that consist of an incident is automatically dealt with using Microsoft 365 Defender. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint also includes automated investigation and remediation, which is in short called AIR. The capabilities are basically to understand threats that are well known and take actions immediately. This process is based on security analyst report. So this can be security analyst reports and analyst results on your system or in general any system. And if you go to Action Center, you can track all the activities. So let's look at the process. Basically, let's just say a well known threat has been detected. It actually then triggers a playbook. There are some built in playbook already in the system, but you can also create your own playbook. Let's just say in this playbook, it says that if you see that someone has sent a file and this file may have a specific name for this particular malware. So basically, I mean, it can be just, the file name could be, let's just say, my resume doc file, right? Usually, malware-related file names are just very something very common, not suspicious. It won't say my malware or anything like that. So, okay, so first playbook thing is like, is this file present? Okay, so let's just say yes. Then, basically, it can scan the file and identify if this is suspicious. So it'll look at where is the source? What does this file contain? Uh, does the content of the file match the malware that we suspect is in play? So, is it suspicious? Yes, then perhaps one thing to do is to block the device that has the file so that it does not spread. Let's just say this file is actually not present, but somehow the threat was detected. Then still there will be threat detection in play, and it'll still just look for the file or whatever threat was triggered, right? And if it determines there's still a threat, then it'll take appropriate action. I'm just putting in as an example to block device, but it doesn't have to be blocking device. It could be even a low level action, such as sending a report to the admin. But the whole idea here is that threat is triggered, and basically all the steps that an admin could have taken is automatically taken. So here are different levels of automation. The example that you saw was a full automation, means that action is performed automatically. It can be just blocking a device or blocking a user or forcing a user to re-authenticate or forcing a user to do MFA, things like that. Then there are semi automation with core. What that really means is that it is for most part automated, but for certain things, approval is needed. So, for example, in our previous example, perhaps if the laptop that will be blocked belongs to senior administrations or C-level execs or IT department who it is essential that they have their laptop with them. So in that case, maybe approval is needed. So maybe it can be it can be filtered that way. Then it can be semi with any. What that really means is approval is needed for any core level changes. Um, and Basically, in that case, like you need approval for, in this case, like if there is any type of major change, such as blocking user, blocking device, and approval is required regardless. So, let's look at the Action Center. As we talked about it before, that Action Center keeps track of all the actions that are performed in order for you to investigate or manage any type of incidents or any type of alerts. It is a unified action center, means that it includes Defender for endpoints as well. It will have a list of all the pending actions, which is basically means that these are ongoing incidents that has not been resolved. And the history section will show you remediation actions that has um, already been taken. And also it shows you how it was taken, which commands were run. Looking at the history section, can be helpful in terms of trying to find anomalies or do further analysis. So, to summarize, we talked about managing incidents. We also talked about managing automated incidents. And finally, we talked about Action Center and how incidents are visible there. Hi, everyone. In this lesson, we are going to talk about identity protection and Microsoft Defender. So, our goal for this lesson will be to first discuss identity protection with Azure AD. Then, we will also describe Microsoft Defender for identity and how it works. We'll discuss some of the configuration steps as well. No discussion about identity protection will be complete without talking about Azure AD. We are all very much familiar with Azure AD. Just to give a brief recap, it is the identity management system for your Azure environment. Azure AD already has built in features for protecting identity. So, these built in features include, but not limited to, its ability to understand user sign in properties, meaning that Azure AD is intelligent enough to know where you are signing in from and what are the common sign in attributes. It can evaluate real time sign in risk and associate different risk level. It also can have policies that is configured by administrators, and these policies are conditional access and MFA policies. We're all very much familiar with MFA. I'll talk briefly about conditional access. And finally, it can generate alerts based on security risks. So let's first look at conditional access policy in Azure AD, which is really one of the foundational configuration for Azure AD identity protection. So, conditional access policy, in a nutshell, is a policy that you can configure in Azure AD based on the configuration that you want your users to follow for logging into Azure AD or any application that is connected to Azure AD. And these policies get enforced on the user, and basically it can be enforced as in if the user doesn't follow these rules, you can completely block the user from signing in, or you can assign more what we call conditions, as in you can force the user to do multi-factor authentication or authentication using another app. Keep in mind that conditional access policies can be enforced or it can be report only. So, just to look at the screenshot, in the first screenshot, we are seeing the conditional access policy where you actually create the policy, give it a name, apply it to users and whatnot. And in the second screenshot, we are seeing how you basically configure the condition where these policies would fire. So it can be related to user risk, it can be related to sign in risk, it can be related to device platform. For example, you're only doing conditional access policy when users are signing in from their tablets. It can be location specific, app specific, and you can even filter the devices. So let's look at the sign in process. So, first, basically, a user is attempting to sign in. The user will add its username and password, and Azure AD at this point evaluates the user's sign in attributes, as in addition to what is the username and password, it also checks the location, the network IP. By location, I mean geographical location, the authentication method, as in, is it the cached authentication or did the user actually type in? And then basically, it evaluates the sign in attributes, and it basically asks internally, is this signing any different? So in other words, let's say you're a user, you always sign in, from your work, and you are signing in from your home, or maybe you are on a business trip and you're signing in from a different geographical location. Then basically, that could trigger an event. And if that is considered a suspicious event, then basically it checks if there is a policy. So the policy may be that if you are not signing in from your office, then you have to basically do a MFA. So if the answer is yes, then it'll prompt the user for MFA. And let's just say the activity is not, even though your signing attribute was somewhat different, maybe instead of office, you signed in from your home, it's not considered suspicious. So in that case, you'll have the normal steps to basically complete your sign in process. Now, Azure AD is completely capable of doing remediation, and this remediation lifecycle can take two different approach. So, basically, the for any remediation process, there are two different approaches. The first step will always be the administrator will configure the risk policies, as we talked about. Different types of conditional access policies, right? So it can be whether you're logging in from office or you're logging in outside work. Are you signing to VPN? That sort of thing. So if the risk is detected, then the first check is that if this policy is enforced. We talked about conditional access can be enforced, or it can be just a report only policy. So if it is not enforced, then a report will be generated which will notify the administrator. Now the administrator can immediately take action. For example, administrator can actually manually prompt the user to reset the password, or administrator can actually basically block the user if they read the report and think that the user is logging in from a geographical location that does not make sense. They have not been notified that the user will be working from this remote location. So that is a manual process. But if you have a conditional access policy which triggers an action, then what happens is that in this case, let's just say the action is enforcing MFA, then the user will receive a notification. In this case, notification is actually the prompt for MFA. The user will complete the action and the user will be signed in. If the user cannot complete the action, obviously user cannot sign in. So the one method is more of an automated method, where basically it just triggers an action, and based on end users activity, the user will be granted access. The other one is more of a manual method, where it is not really triggering an action. In other words, even though a risk is detected, user is actually able to sign in, and then the admin only gets notification. So now that we talked briefly about Azure AD and how it protects users for during sign-in process, let's jump into Microsoft Defender for Identity. Microsoft Defender for Identity is a cloud based security solution. It leverages your on premise Active Directory and the signals it receives from Active Directory to investigate threat, compromised identities, malicious insider action, all these different security risks. So basically, it is working with your on premise identity or on premise environment. Azure AD is basically strictly on your identity infrastructure in Azure. And then we have Microsoft Defender for Identity that is focusing on your on premise environment. So, how do you configure it? Keep in mind that Microsoft Defender for Identity is actually hosted in Azure. So, basically, first you have to create an instance in your Microsoft Defender for Identity portal. Then you have to specify a service account for your on premise environment, and you have to download and install the sensor packets, which are basically agent type of software that is running on your on premise domain controllers. And these agents will actually send information to Microsoft Defender, and these informations will be evaluated by Defender to identify if there are any security risk. Now you do have to basically configure permissions so that the agent or the sensors have access to this data. You can also configure integration of Microsoft Defender uh, for identity with Defender for cloud apps, and there's also integration available with Microsoft 365 Defender. So, as we said, that Microsoft Defender for Identity will collect alerts, and then it will basically take those alerts and explain suspicious activities that it detects using the sensors that are actually already installed in your environment. These alerts have different categories. The categories are based on when the alert is detected um, for the suspicious activity. So, any suspicious activity usually have, from security perspective, few different phases. The reconnaissance phase is when it is actually early in your environment, and basically your security software, in this case Microsoft Defender, is actually monitoring the um, actions of these activities that it suspects as a malicious activity. Then you have compromised credential phase, where basically, as the name suggests, that the credentials have been compromised, and Microsoft Defender can detect that based on the activity. Then is the lateral movement phase, where with the compromised identity, basically this security risk or this malware is trying to access different types of resources within your environment. So basically, it's lateral because basically it's still at the resource phase. It hasn't gone to privilege access. So domain dominance basically means it has already infiltrated your domain or some of your critical resources. And last but not the least, you have exfiltration phase, where actually data has already been compromised, meaning data has been stolen. So let's look at the alert attributes when you have the alert. First one is the alert title, which is the name of the alert given by Microsoft Defender. Then you have a brief description of what has actually happened. And here you might have description of multiple apps that is impacted. Um, Evidence means information and related data. So here you'll have some more in-depth information. And finally, you'll also have the option to download all this information in Excel format. You can basically later run advanced queries in your Excel file. Now, bringing it all together, Let's look at the architecture diagram. We all know that Microsoft Defender for Identity sends the parsed information that it collects to Microsoft Defender for Identity in the cloud service. So it basically has a few features. First of all, it will capture and inspect domain controllers network traffic. It will also receive some of the radius account information if you already have done some VPN integration. It will also receive data about users and computers activity in your active directory, such as user sign-in activity, group membership activity. And then finally, it will transfer all the relevant data, not all the data that is parsed in your on-premise environment by the sensors, the data that could be related to security, to Microsoft Defender for Identity. And in the cloud service for Microsoft Defender for Identity, these data will be further analyzed to basically to give alert, or basically send a report, or to do other activities with the metadata. As you can see from the diagram, that sometimes this data is also used to basically compare and contrast with Microsoft Cloud App Security, because we can actually integrate these two services as well as Microsoft 365 Defender. So basically, something might be at a lower risk only at a Microsoft Defender for Identity level, but once everything is integrated, then we have a much bigger picture, and we can identify that across all your apps and all your environment, what is the level of risk. So we touched briefly already on this. There are several integration features that are available. Microsoft Defender for Identity um, cloud service can connect to Microsoft's intelligent security graph, and this enables Microsoft Defender for Identity to integrate with Microsoft Defender for Cloud app as part of the Microsoft 365 Defender monitoring strategy. So once you integrate, you'll be able to see on-premise environment for your users, for all users in your organization across multiple apps, whether it is in your on-premise environment or in the cloud. So basically, all of them will basically work together to generate alerts or even take automated remediation feature. And last but not the least, you can also have integration with Microsoft Sentinel. That is basically another SIEM-based tool which gives you a deeper insight into security risks and security alerts. Finally, let's summarize what we learned in this lesson. We talked about Azure AD and identity protection features within Azure AD. We then talked about Microsoft Defender for Identity and some of its features. And finally, we also discussed integration features that are available with Microsoft Defender for Identity. Let's discuss Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. In this lesson, we are going to talk about what Microsoft Defender for cloud apps is. We'll describe some of its features, and finally, we'll also talk about some of the configuration steps. First, let's talk about what actually is Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. But before we dive into it, let's first talk about Cloud Access Security Broker, or CASB. CASB is not a Microsoft proprietary or Microsoft specific concept. It is really a concept around cybersecurity. CASB means that it is a gatekeeper or a software that is between your cloud services and your user. And you use a CASB service to basically enforce policies and rules between the communication that happens between your user and the cloud service or cloud apps. And this helps you basically protect your cloud application. Microsoft Defender for Cloud App is exactly a CASB. It is basically sits between your applications that are in Microsoft Azure or hosted in Microsoft Azure or any other service that is integrated with Microsoft Azure. So basically, your users, instead of accessing data or instead of accessing application directly from your from their endpoints, it goes through CASB or it goes through Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. And that way you can basically control the access and monitor all the activities, including data related activities. So using Defender for Cloud Apps gives you increased visibility on what the user are doing, as well as it gives you the ability to protect sensitive data. It also gives you the ability to enforce some of the compliance related rules that you need to enforce on your users. So let's look at some of the uh, configuration steps for Microsoft Defender for Cloud. First of all, you need to have appropriate license to enable Microsoft Defender for Cloud. I will not go into too deep into it. For example, if you have Enterprise E3 license, that actually gives you Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Now, however, you can look at the entire licensing matrix to look at which license actually gives you Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and if you don't have the license, how to acquire it. Next is who can configure Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You either have to be a global administrator or security administrator. So what you'll do as a global administrator or security administrator, and after you acquire the license, you'll just open the Microsoft Defender for Cloud portal, and then you'll connect an app as you can see in the screenshot. So basically you'll select the option to connect the app. Once you have connect the app, you'll have increased visibility. Basically what I mean by that is that you will see all the activities associated with the app. Then you can configure the advanced features that comes with Microsoft Defender for Cloud App, and we'll talk more about these features. In addition to a lot of features that protect your app, you can also either fine tune certain policies or create policies that meets your organization's requirement. So let's first look into what you get once you connect your app. The very first thing you should do is to get a generalized picture of your cloud app by looking at your cloud dashboard that is available once you actually connect your app. This dashboard is known as the Cloud Discovery. Basically, what it does is that it gives you a overall cloud app usage in your organization, and this is a high level of usage overview. Then you can dive one level deeper to see which are the top categories for your apps, which type of apps are being used. You can also see how much of this usage are by quote unquote sanctioned or approved apps. You can also see all the apps are that are in specific categories in the discovered apps tab. So basically, the cloud discovery actually gives you just the overall picture, and just looking at this, you can actually figure out the current usage, the top users, different IPs, and whatnot. And from there on, you can configure your policies that control the access as well as the data. Now, speaking of policies, let's talk about conditional access for app control. We are all familiar with conditional access that is available with Azure AD. The conditional access for app control allows you to basically enforce access and session control over your organization's app. This is integrated with Azure AD's conditional access. You can configure the apps to work with the conditional access app control, and you can do it with few clicks. So as you can see in this screenshot, basically what you're going to do is create a new conditional access policy, and then in the access control, basically you're going to select session control. And from there, actually, you can choose the option to use conditional access app control. And you can do further customization within the conditional access. The main idea is that after you determine how to do the access control, which is, are you going to do it for specific users or all users, which apps and whatnot, which is what you're seeing in the first or the left side of the screenshot. You need to create the policy so that you can route the users to the Defender for Cloud apps. And this is where you can protect your data as well as access using the Defender for Cloud apps. As we mentioned before, your Microsoft Defender for Cloud apps is a CASB. And what you want to do is that you want to route all the users instead of going them basically instead of them going directly into the apps. You want to route it in a way so that the user's access goes into Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and then basically everything is monitored by Defender for Cloud. That is what you're doing with conditional access app control, is basically routing the users to Microsoft Defender for app. Otherwise, they'll just go directly to the app itself. So, what is the benefit of using conditional access app control? First of all, it will prevent any type of data breach, because now you have Microsoft Defender for App basically monitoring all the data that is accessed by the user, or data that is basically uploaded or downloaded by user. You can create labels for your documents. We'll talk about labels a little bit later, so that your documents are encrypted, as well as so that you can now, with the labels, you can now actually control which documents are downloaded. So, user, even if they accidentally have access to highly sensitive data, they will be prevented from, let's just say, downloading highly sensitive data, because you have policies across that. You can also prevent upload of unlabeled files, and by doing so, you can actually block potential malware. User may not be aware that maybe certain files have malware in it, so they might just upload it to your app. Now your entire app is infected. So if you are going through CASB, then you can actually protect any type of file upload by having such policies. You can actually block potential malware, because CASB is already, it's a intelligence driven system, so it already has built-in policies to detect any type of malware. Finally, you can monitor your apps for compliance purpose, as well as just monitor to see if there are any anomalies going on. So now that we have protected access and session, let's move on to how to protect sensitive information, which basically means how to protect your data. Your step one will be to discover data. So you first have to determine which apps are dealing with data and what type of data. So for example, let's look at a app that is heavily utilizes data, that is email. So here you already know that email has, first of all, the email data itself, the data that is in the email, then it can have attachment, then it can have header information. The next step is to classify the sensitive data. In this step, you will do what basically it says. You'll classify your data, and we'll talk more about that. Next step will be based on the classification, you create policies and rules to protect your data. Last but not the least will be to monitor these data to make sure that your data is actually being protected, and also just to understand how this data flows through your environment, what is actually going on, so that you can better equip yourself to protect your data. So we talked about classifying sensitive information. What that really means is to determine what is really sensitive in the context of your organization. Now, Microsoft Defender for Cloud already includes more than 100 predefined sensitive information types. And you can use these types to basically determine the labels that you are going to use. For example, you can use the labels personal to basically label all the personal information, such as your employees or your customers, name, address, even social security number if you have those information. However, when it comes to social security number, that may be categorized at a higher level. For example, that may be confidential or highly confidential information. Next, you have certain information that can be shared. But the information that can be shared can be two different types, such as public information that can be shared with everyone, including maybe shared in with the, with uh, through your e-commerce platforms, such as you're selling a product, so product description is public information. However, how many quantities of products you are selling every day is a not a public information perhaps you want to share. Maybe that is a general information that can be shared internally. But the zest of it is that you need to classify all your information and then basically attach a label to those information. Once you have enabled information protection, um, you can automatically scan for new files, and then the classification labels are basically attached to those new files once you have basically configured the settings. Let's now talk about threat detection. Um, Microsoft Defender for Cloud app actually includes out of the box anomaly detection policies that utilizes your users' behavior. What that really means is that it utilizes user and entity behavior analytics, also known as UBA or UEBA. This is actually a machine learning mechanism which basically utilizes the existing behavior, or what is considered normal behavior, and then it actually flags if there is an anomaly of the normal behavior. So what happens is that Microsoft Defender for Cloud, after you activate it, it'll spend first few days, and usually it's 7 days, to learn about your user behavior, and then it basically creates a baseline. And once something happens that is out of the ordinary from your baseline, it will trigger an alert. If it already detects something that is not only out of your baseline, but it is actually in line with what it knows about common security breaches, common malware, or something, that it can trigger alerts that are at a higher priority level. So some of the indicators for alerts are risky IPs, login failures for a user who never has login failure now has a lot of login failures, administrative related activities that is all over the place, and finally location. Maybe there is an attempt to log into your apps from a country where you don't have users, or you don't have customers. You can actually utilize the built-in policies, which is fine to detect threat, but you can also fine-tune these built-in policies to meet your organization's need. So, finally, to bring it all together, let's look at how we can protect our data. Our data protection has main three pillars. First of all, you need to take some steps to actually have policies that scan your files or fine tune the policies to protect your data. Once you have all of these in place, you need to constantly monitor, and monitoring can be done by reviewing the dashboard, reviewing the alerts, and also reviewing the reports that are being generated. And you can actually generate custom reports and send it to your admins, let's just say every day or once a week, and so forth. But the key here is to make sure that you are actually monitoring your environment, not just relying on automated policies. And finally, have policies that actually proactively detect any type of anomaly. You can use the built-in policies like we talked about this before. Also, you can fine-tune the policies to meet your organization's requirement. To summarize, in this lesson, we learned about Microsoft Defender for cloud apps and how it works. We also talked about protecting sensitive data. And finally, we talked about how to detect security breach.